Hello folks and welcome to Tippcast with myself Shane Stapleton, joined as ever by the head of sport in the Nina Guardian, Shane Brophy, and delighted to say we're also joined by WLRFM commentator Tomas McCarthy. Lads, how are you doing this morning?
Hi Shane, how's it going?
Not too bad.
Hey Shane.
Shane, we'll start off with yourself. How excited should Tipperary folk be about the semi-final this weekend, Tipperary against Waterford in the Camogie? And to be fair, we have a nice little competition.
Yeah, because we've a pair of tickets to give away in the show this morning, so anybody that's logging on should engage with us. If you want to enter, just leave a comment on Facebook, Twitter or YouTube with the answer of who did Tipperary beat in the All-Ireland quarter-final. So if you want to be entered into the draw for a pair of tickets to Nolan Park on Saturday, get your entry in there. Yeah, there's a nice level of optimism and excitement that maybe this is the time Tip will finally break through the ceiling. Like they lost was it 5 semi-finals in 6 years, going back to 4 semi-finals and 5 between 2018 and 2021. But if I was a sports editor in a Waterford newspaper, I think they'd be saying exactly the same thing, because I think both teams, when they looked at the draw, would have wanted to get each other, because you're not facing one of the Corks or Galways, it's a massive opportunity for both teams to get to an All-Ireland. 17 years since Tip were in an All-Ireland senior final, and as far as I know, Waterford have never been in the senior final, so huge prize and offer for both teams.
Yeah, talk to us about it from the Waterford side of things, Tomas. How are you feeling about this one?
Yeah, I think as Shane mentions there, it's a massive opportunity for both teams. 1945 is actually the last time Waterford are in an All-Ireland final, so the Tip are waiting since 2006, but Waterford are waiting since 1945. So that's a long gap, and Waterford have been in or around the knockout stages as well in recent times. It's their 6th year in a row that they've been in a quarter-final or semi-final, lost out to Cork in the semi-final last year. But I think Waterford have a stronger squad this time around. Sean Power has come in as manager this year, has brought a really strong backroom team with him. They've free scoring forwards, they've a bit of strength and depth. Probably the concern that I'd have going into this game is that how battle hardened are Waterford. They had it all their own way during the group stages of the All-Ireland series. Haven't been properly tested, I'd say, since the Tipperary defeat in the Munster semi-final, and they've had big wins over Offaly and Limerick and Antrim during the group stages. So that's probably the only worry going into this game, is how battle hardened are Waterford as compared to Tip.
And Tomas, to just go back a year ago, I think we all remember in Thurles that Waterford came and had it all their own way against Tipperary. Things have changed an awful lot in a year. That this Tipperary team, would you have kind of looked at it and thought, okay, this is a very different Tip team than the one we beat last year?
Oh yeah, 100%, Shane. I was really impressed by him in that Munster semi-final in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, and Tip got 4 goals that day. It could have easily been 7. I thought they really carved open that Waterford defence, and only for Brian O'Regan between the posts, it could have been a whole lot worse for Waterford. Now Waterford had only beaten Cork the week before, and that was a milestone win. Waterford had tried long and hard to beat Cork at senior level, so that was a massive fill-up. So it was always going to be difficult to go again a week later against a team of a calibre of Tipperary. But I think Waterford will have to learn lessons from that game. I thought they were really open in defence. Now usually Claude Carroll would play as a sweeper, sort of like a Tyke de Borca role, if you like. That Waterford Camogie setup, but Waterford looked very open that day against Tipperary, and I think they'll have to be a lot tighter if they're to get the better of them on Saturday. And Claude is a little bit of an injury concern. She only came on as sub against Antrim the last time out in the group stages. She had a heel injury, and actually Leisha Forrest made her championship debut at centre back for Waterford that day. Claude Carroll came on the last 10 minutes, so I think it's going to be really important that Claude Carroll is fit to fulfil that sweeper role and really cut down the space for that lethal Tipperary attack.
Is it out at this stage, Shane, in terms of this is a different Tipperary team to last year, and Waterford already know what they're up against, having played in Munster?
I think so, and you probably got it from, I suppose, the punditry from the quarterfinals, I suppose, live on telly, and like I suppose when you get neutral validation, I think there's no doubt from what we were looking at through the Munster campaign and early in the All-Ireland series that this was a different Tipperary group this year that looks slicker, more athletic, playing a better brand of Camogie. But then when you see the Sarah O'Donovan's and the what's her name? The Wexford pundit, I can't remember what's her name.
Ursula Jacob.
Ursula Jacob, like when they're validating that as a neutral, okay, we have a serious team here. But I suppose the interesting for Tip is like to try and beat a team you've beaten already. That's always dangerous. And I know the Gaff game was the guts of 3 months ago, and like I accept what Thomas was saying. I thought Waterford were a little flat that day, and like there could have been a little bit of a hangover from beating Cork the week before, while Tip were coming in fresh, and they were a little stung at how the National League had finished. They'd lost that last game to Kilkenny, which cost them a place in the final, and they got a good lead into that championship. And but look, now I think there's no doubt. I think Tip probably had the tougher route to get here, like Dublin and Waterford. While they put them away comfortably, like I would put them ahead of the likes of Limerick and Offaly. I suppose that draw against Kilkenny, while it wasn't a win, like I thought Tip were definitely the better team for a lot of that game in Nolan Park, and to have got a run out in Nolan Park so recently is a big help as well. And then I suppose they beat Antrim as comfortably as Waterford did, so thankfully with no injuries. So look, they're going nicely, but this is where the pressure counts. This is where, if there's any psychological baggage from losing those 4 semi-finals between 18 and 21 comes into view, and you like to think it won't. Like it's a new management. It's not one of the big 3 you're coming up against, which that's always a psychological barrier. If it's like I say, no different for Waterford, and a massive opportunity. I suppose for Tip, it'll be how they set up, and what will they go maybe with. Maybe an Emer Heffernan starting and going 3 power forwards or 3 finishers, or will they stay with Claude McIntyre and sort of have 2 inside? So it'd be interesting for me to see how they go. Because no different than Waterford. Tip have another aspect Tip have developed this year is strength and depth.
Yeah, and if you look at the Tip team, you'd be delighted to have Karen Kennedy back at centre back this year. Teresa Ryan bringing a bit of competitiveness into midfield, and then an awful lot of players that can score. Devan obviously caught the eye the last day. Claudia McIntyre would probably pop over more than 2 if she was playing again. Roisin Howard and so on. And like you've mentioned, the bench there, from the bench, Tipperary got 1-5 against, let's be honest, it wasn't the strongest Antrim team, who were down a couple of players this year. So that's the kind of strengths that Tipperary would look at, in their own ranks. But could you explain the Waterford strengths, Tomas, and let us know where exactly Tipperary, could be hurt?
Well, Bet Carton, Shane. To me, Waterford's greatest ever Camogie player. I think she's the best Camogie player in the country. In her last 5 championship games, she's hit double figures. She's on 6 goals and 106 points this season across league and championship, which is phenomenal scoring. But it's not just her scoring rate, it's her work rate as well off the ball. She really puts it in, and she's a real team player as well. She's really unselfish. Even when at times when she'll go for her own score, she'll always lay the ball off to the player in the better position. And I think her battle with, I presume, Karen Kennedy is going to be massive in this game, because Beck Harton is so influential for Waterford, not just getting scores herself, but creating scores for others as well. And I think it's a really dangerous Waterford attack. You have Annie Fitzgerald back this year. She's doing both ladies football and Camogie. You have Abby Flynn and you have Niamh Rockett as well, 3 real goal getters. And you also have Mairead O'Brien, who's really come of age this year for Waterford. Great speed, great strength, well able to open up defences. She's got 3-3 in the group stages as well. So there's plenty of scoring power in that Waterford attack. But without a doubt, the one to watch from Tipperary's point of view is Beth Carton. She's absolutely phenomenal.
Will she play at centre forward? I know I've been in the Munster semi-final. She seemed to be a lot around the middle of the field, or could they maybe place her at full forward? Because I suppose that's where maybe Tip have had to change in the last couple of games. Like Claudia Quirk struggled against Kilkenny and Mairead Evanston came in and started the semi-final or the quarter-final against Antrim, so on. Has done pretty well, but not ideal to be changing your full-back this late in the season.
Yeah, I'd expect Beth to start at centre forward, Shane, and I think, like as you mentioned there, she is playing a lot deeper maybe than in previous years, but usually they keep Abby Flynn, Annie Fitzgerald and Niamh Rockett inside, and they'll be pretty threatening for that Tipperary full back line. And like as you said, Denise Gall caused Tip a lot of trouble up in Nolan Park, and in fairness, Tipperary management team, they acted fast, brought in Mairead Evanston, and she really locked down that position after that. But there's definitely a goal scoring threat in that Waterford attack. Outside of Bedcar, I think they've got 22 goals across league and championship this year. So I do think Bet will be probably in that centre forward deep line role. And even that day against Tipperary up in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, when the team were flat, I thought Beck Carton just carried Waterford on her back. Like, she was tremendous. Like, I mean, what a leader. So I think her battle with Karen Kennedy is going to be a massive deciding factor in this game. Yeah,
it was like realistic. It will be the two best players on either team going head to head. Like while Cát Devan rightly gets the plaudits as the forward to do all the scoring, like Karen Kennedy is she's the giant captain. She's the best player on the Tipperary team at centre back.
Oh, she's tremendous, Shane. Like, I mean, not only the way she defends, but how she drives her team forward as well. Really influential. And another big player, I think, for Tipperary is Emer McGrath, just in terms of her free take, and it really caught my eye that day up in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, not only from close range but from far out as well. That's a real weapon, I think, in that Tipperary attack, to have a free taker, that can score from 65 metres out as well as the tap over ones.
And Tomas, Shane has been talking a lot recently about, there's no excuse for a big Tipperary sport to try and get out to this one. And like, obviously there's club fixtures going on at the moment, but we're hoping that there's going to be a big Tipperary representation at this match. What's the mood like in Waterford, and do you expect there to be a big crowd going?
Yeah, I think there'll be a decent Waterford turnout, Shane. I think there was a really big support came to the last group game up in the SCTU arena. The stands were packed, and it was a great initiative, I think, from the county board to bring along, it must have been about a dozen under-8 teams to play at half-time. And then after the game, I think the players out in the field for about a half an hour, signing autographs and taking photos. And I've never seen that before, for a Waterford Camogie team to be swarmed after the game, just like the hurlers would be after a big championship match. So that's a great sign. So look, hopefully there'll be a big Waterford and Tip turnout and create a great atmosphere in Nolan Park on Saturday.
Yeah, I would expect that game will get the biggest share of the crowd. Like Cork and Galway probably is the big match of the two, but you have the two of the big heavyweights, like so. But I just think for Tip and Waterford, the prize is so big. Like, it's as I say, the way it should be long, and like to get to Croke Park would be amazing for boy. I think there's a lot of Tip clubs making their efforts to be there, trying to get buses down and generate a good crowd. And like they need it, the players deserve it and deserve to feed off it. Like, look, both men's teams have underperformed, I suppose, disappointed to a certain extent this year. So like it would be great for maybe either Waterford or Tip, one of them to fill the void and get to Croke Park on the 6th of August.
Yeah, and as we said already, we have 2 free tickets to give away. So just answer us on one of the platforms that you're watching this on. Who did Tipperary beat in the quarterfinal of the All-Ireland Championship? So that's 2 free tickets to Nolan Park, which, it's going to be a great occasion. And just in terms of if you want to read any more about the game coming up, it's all covered in the Neely Guardian, which of course is on sale there locally now.
Just before we move on from Camogie, just to wish the junior team the best of luck in their All-Ireland semi-final. They're playing Roscommon at 12 o'clock in Ashburn. Not ideal to have, I suppose, two big semi-finals. I suppose so far apart. I suppose if it is possible to get from Ashburn to Kilkenny in time for the second game, but it's a bit of a rush. I think maybe ideally they could have put the Tip Waterford game on second in Nolan Park. But look, it is what it is. And look, if Tipperary have 2 teams represented in the All-Ireland finals after the weekend, I think they'll certainly take it. But best of luck to David and his group, like they've had.
It just seems to have stalled on me there for a moment. Tomas, I think you can still hear me live and clear. So yeah, there is that junior final coming up as well, or semi-final coming up this weekend. Shane, do you want to finish off your thoughts?
Yeah, just to say that they're which David and the group all well, like they've had a comfortable route to the semi-final, and look, Tipperary would probably be thinking that their second team really probably should be at least up at intermediate level. Look, they've got to negotiate Roscommon to a final, like, so a big Saturday for Tip Camogie, that's for sure.
Yeah, without doubt. We'll move on to the All-Ireland final because that's coming up this weekend. Limerick against Kilkenny. There's a 4 in a row at stake. Tomas, are you excited about this final? I mean, we've obviously had some big fixtures on the way to this, but like, it's a fairly mouth-watering final.
And it is, Shane, like recent clashes between these two have been pretty tight, going back to.
Now Tomas is frozen on me. So, Shane, can you hear me there?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay, so both men have just stalled on me there. So hopefully both lads will jump back in there soon enough. So obviously that's a huge All-Ireland final coming up this weekend. Limerick against Kilkenny. And just in terms of like some of the players that have had huge seasons so far, Aaron Gillane has scored 342 to this stage. 29 of those have been frees, but obviously he's been on fire. TJ Reid on the other side, he is 266. And to be fair to Owen Cody, what a huge season for him. He scored 421. And Martin Keown actually has scored 5 goals in the championship this year. And this is a player who obviously wasn't fully fit for the semi-final against Clare. So like 5'9" is some shooting from him at this stage. And interestingly enough, the second top scorer for Limerick is a defender in Diarmuid Burns. And of course, a lot of that is frees. And then Seamus Flanagan, he scored 4'9". So obviously he was very good in Munster when I think that Limerick were still trying to find their top gear. So I think we've Shane Brophy back here now. Shane, the All-Ireland final this weekend, how excited are you by
it? Strangely enough, it's...
You want to see them both lose?
Not quite. I won't say who I want to see win or lose, but no, I suppose maybe apart. If you were in Limerick and Kilkenny, you'd probably be psyched up for it. But I'm finding the build-up very, very low key. Probably not helped by the fact that, like there was like both teams have had media nights, but I suppose the build-up is. I find it. I don't know if you find it up in Dublin. It's very, very muted for some reason. I don't know if that's just a modern way where bar the two teams involved, I think a lot of people sort of move on. I think, look, it'll still have a huge viewership. People are going to sit down and watch it at the weekend. But personally, I suppose it was Tipper knocked out, the sort of the bang of the inter-county went to small. But look, I'll be no less interested in how it plays out at the weekend. I'm just fascinated to see I've no doubt that Kilkenny are going to stand up to the challenge. They always do. Just how did they bridge that small bit of a gap from last year? Like it wasn't while Limerick were deserved winners last year, there wasn't an awful lot in it, and I do think Kilkenny are further are probably look more united team. Not more united, more gelled squad this year. David Blanchfield. It looks like he'd be a big loss out of half back line, somebody that maybe could have gone toe to toe with Garrod Hegarty. So, but just fascinating. And like if Limerick bring more of what they brought in the second half against Galway, I can only see them retaining their title. So look, it's just I suppose it's fascinating from both ends of the scale.
Yeah, Tomas, from your side, are you excited by this final? What are you expecting?
Yeah, I think it's going to be pretty close again, Shane. Like, I mean, recent meetings between these two have been pretty tight. Look at last year's All-Ireland, the 2019 semi-final, the 2018 quarter-final. It's going to be a puck of the ball again. And like, as Shane touched on there, we're going to have some big matchups throughout the field. Like, I think the one everyone's looking forward to is Hugh Lawler versus Aaron Gillane on the edge of the square. Like, I mean, that's going to be a massive duel between those two. Like Gillane in hurler of the year form, Hugh Lawler not too far behind it, and like Gillane is really Limerick's go-to man. He delivers day in, day out. So that's going to be huge. And then up the other end, Owen Cody perhaps up against Dan Morrissey. Cody won 5 last time out, really stepping up to the mark. So there's going to be big battles all over the field. You just sense that Limerick are getting stronger game by game. They looked vulnerable during the Munster Championship, looked like they could have been knocked out of the Munster Championship at certain stages, but they just seem to find a way every day they go out, and I just think they're going to edge it once again on Sunday.
And Shane, we've got a battle of the two best goalkeepers in the game here, Owen Murphy and Nicky Quaid. Both are much vaunted at this stage, but I mean, whoever has the bigger game here, it could be that tight.
Oh, definitely. And look, you probably would have said Owen Murphy's had the better year. Nicky Quaid has probably made some maybe goalkeeping errors, like I suppose we wouldn't have seen maybe in the last few years, but that's not to say he won't step. But he's made some big saves. He's also maybe let in one or two that maybe he would ordinarily have saved. We're looking at that's holding him to a high account. He's been so good. But I suppose we've a lot of key things, like how we assume Declan Hannon's going to play, but how fit will he be? Like, will they give him some extra protection? Will they, if they allow him to sit back and maybe play Kyle Hayes in front of him, that would have maybe allow Richie Reid to be sweeper at the other side, and we see how effective he was against Clare, picking up those balls maybe, and that Kilkenny would probably like that, because he would be able to maybe cut off the avenues to Flanagan and Galan to a greater extent. I suppose there'd be a lot of like what happens then, like who drops out? Does Cian Lynch drop out? Does David Reedy drop out? Like I think Reedy's coming into the team in the last couple of games has I definitely think it's ignited the forwards a small bit. He's dropping into pockets there around the half back line, and he's delivering some quality ball inside, and then late on in the game he finds himself in brilliant pockets of space for long range points. So like I definitely think he's one of the underrated Limerick players on the team.
Raymond Gilburn, who's a Limerick man, will it be a hard watch for you Tip boys on Sunday? Would you prefer if the game was abandoned and no title awarded for the season? No comment. But like, you're looking at a 4 in a row bid from Limerick here, and Kilkenny are looking to stop that 4 in a row. Tomas, like the motivation here for Kilkenny, it should be through the roof.
Oh, absolutely. And you just know that Kilkenny are going to turn up. There's no question about that. They will put it up to Limerick, and they'll be going out all guns blaze. And you had a comparison earlier in the week, Shane, between the potential Limerick 4 in a row team and the Kilkenny 4 in a row of the noughties, and it was a torturous exercise, I could see, for both yourself and Michael Verney. But those comparisons will be flying around again come Sunday evening if Limerick managed to pull it off. But no shortage of motivation for Kilkenny, and I can just see this going down to the wire once again.
Yeah, like Shane, if you go back to the league final when the two teams met in April, it finished Limerick 220, 15 points for Kilkenny, and to be fair to Derek Ling, he'd only probably had the team for 5 or 6 months if you include pre-season training. Whereas, John Kiley, that was his 11th win at that stage, I suppose, in 11 big finals. He's now extended it to 12. Like he knew his team inside out, knew his panel inside out. But, I'd look at that game and I think Barry Nash got up, he scored his goal. Things have changed massively since for Limerick and for Barry Nash, because he's now a marked man. He's rarely getting up the field to get those scores anymore. Like how much different is this Kilkenny team to then? Versus that.
Oh, yeah. Definitely, because you think that the Ballyhale lads are only coming back in dribs and drabs after their club final, I definitely think it was an enlightening experience for Derek Ling in terms of how you take on Limerick. I suppose for any new manager taking on Limerick for the first time, you really don't get a feel for how they set up until you get a taste of them. And I think Kilkenny will be forewarned, certainly. But look, they'll only look back to last year's All-Ireland and see how they went toe-to-toe with them. And if you go back to that final, Garrod Hegarty was outstanding. But Garrod hasn't gotten to that level this year. But Grod Hegarty, I think he's a sneaky bet for man of the match. I just think in All Ireland finals he tends to show up, so I wouldn't be a bit surprised if he produces the big performance on the big day. I suppose coming back to Kilkenny, it's like TJ Reid. Like we all know he's going to hit his frees. Like, can he chip in with maybe a big score? I'm sure Owen Cody's going to be a marked man. Like, they really need Owen Cody to be getting 1-5 or 1-6 again. If you know it, like, just who else can chip it? Like I think Kilkenny certainly need one of their maybe less heralded forwards to have a big game, a Billy Ryan or maybe Richie Hogan coming off the bench, just to have one of those, or Walter Walsh did as he did in 2012. Somebody just to do a really, I suppose, produce something on the scoreboard that's going to help maybe bridge that gap to Limerick, because we know Limerick are going to probably contribute scores from 8 or 9 different players.
Yeah, and like, who do you think? What matchup excites you? We've already talked about Aaron Gillane against Hugh Lawler, so that's one obvious enough one. Adrian Mullen, we know that Limerick normally don't do man marking and so on. They'll hope that if he's around the middle area, that Darragh O'Donovan, who's up in the hurler of the year conversation, and Will O'Donoghue might get stuck into him. But is there anyone that you think Limerick absolutely needs to tie down?
I don't. I suppose it's Limerick style not to get too obsessed with what another team does. I said I wouldn't like to see Richie Reid getting too much ball, because like he can ping out passes. Like, I do think from a Kilkenny point of view, I think Tom Morrissey's the one. I just think I think he's been, I don't know, I found it a strange decision in the last 2 games for Limerick that he's been subbed off around the 55-minute mark. Maybe that's a testament to the strength of their panel, that John Kiley is confident that Cathal O'Neill can go in, or certain guys can go in and do a job. But I just think Tom Morrissey is Tom Morrissey's a name that's been left out of the Player of the Year conversation, because like Aaron Gillane is mentioned ahead of him. But I think there's been games where Gillane has been a little quieter early in the championship, but I think Tom Morrissey is an 8 out of 10 every time he's played in the competition. But look, we can understand, because Gillane tends to get a lot of the key scores, and he's been fantastic. But I think Tom Morrissey's so key to that team.
Yeah, he's brilliant. And it's interesting that he's often taken off around 55 or 60-minute mark, because he probably empties himself so much. Do you know, in the league final, just to reference it once more, Shane, in the second half, Kilkenny scored just 5 points, which is something that Galway achieved in the semi-final as well. I mean, not exactly a positive achievement. Yeah. So, but last year in the final, Kilkenny took them all the way to the wire in injury time at the end of the game. Limerick were trying to shut up shop a little bit. So, like, will Kilkenny, do you think there's any chance that Kilkenny don't see it all the way to the end of the line? Because last year there was no Peter Casey and there was no Keane Lynch. Now, to be fair, there's no Sean Finn this time. But, you know, on the face of it, with those names, it should be a stronger Limerick team this year.
It should be. I know I don't, because it's just the Kilkenny way. Like, they never seem to throw in the towel. If you go 5 or 6 down, they'll come chipping away and maybe take a couple of. But even then,
the 2016 and 2019 finals would suggest otherwise.
Well, like 19 had an incident that played a key part, and like 19 was, or 16 was tight enough until Tip ran up a couple of points later on. Like, so no, I don't foresee this to be like, you think last year. I think Limerick got 4 or 5 up in the last few minutes, and Kenny got, I think, 2 or 3 points in a row, and they made it very, very nervy. Like, so no, I don't. I think this is going down to the final whistle. I still think Limerick probably have just that little bit too much. But if Kilkenny snuck it, I wouldn't be a bit surprised either. Like, so, like, you think if there's the one team that could potentially stop a record-breaking 4 in a row for Limerick, it would be Kilkenny's, who've done the last 4 in a row. Like, so. But then in one way, you'd love to see maybe if Limerick won it, like, how would they deal with going for the historic 5 next year? So that would be fascinating in itself.
Yeah, Tomas, one way or another, us other counties can't win with the result of this particular fixture. Like we were just talking there, just obviously your line dropped there for a second, but Keane Lynch is back this year, Peter Casey's back this year. Both lads missed the final last year. Of course, this year, Sean Finn is out. Do you think Limerick are a stronger team than this time last year? I mean, to be fair, most of their games have been very close this year, and every team, they raised their level massively for Limerick, but they keep finding a way.
Yeah, I think that's the remarkable thing about Limerick, Shane. Like, no matter who they're missing, they still seem to find a way to win. They seem to find a way to reorganize, reshape the team. You mentioned like Ian Lynch and Peter Casey missing last year, like Sean Finn missing this year, Declan Hannon, but yet they still managed to rejig the team and make the pieces of the jigsaw fit together. And I think probably they're using their bench a little bit more this year, and maybe using it a bit earlier too. And particularly in defence, we're seeing Richie English come in, we're seeing Colin Coughlin come in, and then
his line has dropped.
Yeah, I think Tomas has dropped there again. We'll come back to Tomas in a moment when his line picks up. So put your neck on the block. Who's going to win this?
Actually, look, it's hard to. You can't really look away from Limerick. Look, they've been there, done it. The pressure's not going to get to them. They have, I say, potentially they have a couple of players in Flanagan, in Hegarty, Cian Lynch, Seamus Flanagan as well that probably we haven't seen them hit peak form, and like they have the potential to do it on the day. They have match winners everywhere. So I think on that basis, like I'm giving it to Limerick, but I don't this. I think it'll go to the wire. I don't see any more than 3 or 4 points in this game. Like I think Kilkenny will need goals like they got in last year's final to win this game, and I think that they'll wet them. Like I don't think you'll see Owen Cody and TJ Reid, Billy Ryan. They'll run at that Limerick defensive to get half a chance. Like you wouldn't rule out maybe Billy Drennan coming in off the bench and having a big game. Like he was very, very good in the league. He's been used sparingly in the championship. Like he could have one big game. And I think is it Eddie Brennan and Monday's Independent was hyping up maybe the impact Richie Hogan could make later on. And like that bit of, look, there's no doubt his best days are behind him. You couldn't sell me that 15-20 minutes of Richie popping up pockets of space couldn't unnerve the Limerick defence a small bit.
Yeah, sure. He came on and got a point last year, and he did okay when he came off the bench the other day, a couple of weeks ago against Clare. Like Derek Ling, it is his first time in charge of Kilkenny in the All-Ireland final. Won the under-20 All-Ireland last year. John Kiley's record in the championship is quite something. So played 37, won 28, drawn 3 and lost 6. To lose just 6 of 37 championship games, I mean that's an unbelievable record.
I'm fairly sure he hasn't lost has he lost a final yet in anything?
No, he's won every single final that they played in, in terms of like competitions that matter. And Kilkenny, they've lost their last 3 All-Ireland finals. Yeah. So I mean, it does get to a stage when you as a county, having previously just hoovered up title after title, that does get in on you a small bit. I mean, it'd be a bitter pill to swallow if they lost the 4th All-Ireland final in a row.
I think there's no doubt it would. But I suppose maybe the fact that I think this team, this last year's team and this year's team are new teams essentially. Like a lot of new faces. Particularly on the Owen Cody's and the David Blanchfields, those sort of guys, the Tommy Walsh's, like so. Like Mikey Butler's. Like I'm fascinated to see who Butler goes on at the weekend. I suppose you mentioned matchups. I think that's the one. Who does Butler? But will they put Butler on Glan and see how he gets on? Or will it be Hugh Lawler? I just think it's fascinating to see what to do with Mikey Butler.
Oh, I think Mikey Butler has to go on Peter Casey and follow him everywhere, sit in his shorts if you can. And Hugh Lawler against Glan is going to be brilliant. Like Hugh Lawler is just on fire. So Tomas, what way is this going to go? Who's going to win?
Oh, I think Limerick by a puck of the ball. I think Shane, but again, it's going to be really tight. I think like benches are going to be important. Like Sir Cathal O'Neill for Limerick, possibly Walter Welch for Kilkenny, Richie Hogan. It's going to go down to the wire, but just the way that Limerick mowed down Galway in the second half, they look like they're getting back to their best. And I think they'll find a way to win once again on Sunday.
I'll put you on the spot here, Tomas. How many Kilkenny players have an All-Ireland medal, as in current Kilkenny players. And I'm just looking at the panel from the 2015 All-Ireland final against Galway.
Oh, great question.
TJ Reid,
Walter,
Richie
Owen Murphy. Does Paddy Deegan have one?
Pádraig Walsh.
Paddy Deegan doesn't, Pádraig Walsh does. Will I give you the answer, lads?
Go on.
Oh, Shane looks like he still wants to have a go.
No. Go on there. No, it's not many. It's probably less than 10 anyway.
It's 8, right?
Yeah.
So Richie Reid was an unused substitute, but you have a lot of players who have played in All-Ireland final and won it. So Owen Murphy, Pádraig Walsh, Killian Buckley, Conor Fogarty, Richie Hogan, TJ Reid, and Walter Walsh. So, as much as it's been a long time since they've won one, they do have plenty of players who know what it's like to get across the line. Tomas, can we ask you about the situation with Waterford and Davy Fitz? He's going to remain on for next year. Obviously, this year wasn't perfect, but at least he finished it up with a very credible win against Tipperary. To be honest, it was comprehensive. What's the mood like in Waterford, and what are your thoughts about the decision to keep Davy on for another year?
Yeah, well, I think the win against Tipperary, I think, took the heat off David Fitzgerald, Shane. I think after that, I think he was always going to stay on for 2024. I think the county board were happy to honour the 2-year agreement that was made when David Fitzgerald was appointed. Now, look, wherever Davy goes, he divides opinion. And that's the case in Waterford as well. And even at a recent county board meeting, some club delegates, voiced their, I suppose, annoyance at the tactics and the style of play. And I suppose a lot of supporters have been saying similar things throughout the summer as well. So look, they finished the campaign on a high. And in fairness to the management and players, it was a very difficult situation. They were out of the Munster Championship. It would have been, the easiest thing would have been to throw in the towel. But, in fairness, they really attacked that game. They came up with great tactics that day, outmaneuvered Tipperary, outworked Tipperary as well. And, they know, players and management know that they didn't do themselves justice this year. And now they have an opportunity to put it right next year. But no question about it, 2023 was a very disappointing year for Waterford. And
just a follow-up question on that, Tomas, do you believe that the players are there for Waterford to be doing an awful lot better?
I think so, Shane. Definitely to be competing for the top 3 in Munster. I mean, probably the most disappointing thing was that Waterford were out of contention in that last game. Like Tipperary were going for a place in the Munster final. Waterford were out of the equation. I do think that the players are there. I suppose injuries played their part again this year. Losing Ty de Burka early on against Limerick, losing Michael Kiley as well. They were big losses. But definitely there were encouraging signs in that win over Tipperary. I think Patrick Fitzgerald is not only a player for the future, I think he's a player for the now. And it was very surprising to me that he wasn't in the starting 15 earlier than that Tipperary game. I felt he should have been alongside Desi Hutchinson earlier on in the championship. So, I thought Mark Fitzgerald was a model of consistency in defence as well. Some have touted him as, a potential centre-back in the future, maybe potential full-back as well. He's going to be one of the rocks that Waterford will build around over the next couple of years. So I think definitely the raw material is still there for Waterford. You still have, Jamie Byrne, Conor Prunty, Austin Gleeson, Desi, Stephen Bennett, players that any county would love to have. So definitely they should be in the shake-up again for the top 3. And that's going to be the measure of success. I asked David Fitzgerald before the provincial campaign started what would be a successful year, and he said making it out of Munster, and Waterford failed that objective this year. So that's how this team are going to be judged now for the coming year.
Okay, well look, Tomas, really appreciate you joining us, and we'll chat again soon, and might even see you down at Nolan Park.
Cheers, thanks a million, lads.
Awesome.
Okay, great to get the thoughts of Tomás McCarthy there of WLR FM and the Waterford News and Star. Shane, we'll move on to the Tipperary Hurling Championship. So the weekend there, Kildangan found a way past Borrislee, despite going down to 13 men in the latter stages. I was watching this game, and I suppose to score the last 6 points of the game went down to 13. Borrislee were down to 14, of course, as well. We might as well mention that. But that's some sign from Kildangan to score the last 6 points of the game to turn this around, having been 12-10 down, and bitterly disappointing for Borrislee.
Yeah, I suppose from a Kildangan point of view, I think we've been waiting maybe for the last 18 months or so, since just they're looking for that spark. We were waiting for the old Kildangan to come back, to a bit of hunger, a bit of drive, but we all, like, they were hurling well, but I always felt there was more in them. And definitely when they went down to 13 men, when Ty Gallagher was sent off, they just seemed to open up, and they just unleashed everything in that last 10 minutes. And like you thought in Boris that Kildangan had the extra man in the last 10 minutes. Like, they just won everything. Their half back line gobbled up the ball. Paul Flynn was getting on the ball in the forwards. Sean Hayes had a massive second half. He only scored 1 point from play, but that was in the first half. But he won 4 frees in the second half, then ended up in points. Billy Seymour cracked over a fine point late on. I just think that 10 minutes could be massive in Kildangan's season. Like, I just think they've now got back to what made them county champions a few years ago. That drive, that go forward, that bit of intensity that was a small bit lacking from their play maybe the last 12 months, but it definitely came back then the last 10 minutes last weekend. I suppose worry for them now is the cost of that win. Like, you had Declan McGrath and Ty Gallagher both received straight red cards. I believe they will be appealing Ty Gallagher's red card. So they hope maybe to get him back. Willie Connors limped off with an ankle injury late on. So if they can get him back for the final on Saturday against Nina, they'll be hoping they'll have a strong chance. But like, they have a good squad there. And moving to Borrislee from your side, I'd say that's going to be a sore one. Like, that was a good hard game now for 50 minutes. Like, the conditions, like the deluge rain that came just at the start of the match was ridiculous, and it would just turn it into a scrap. And I found it compelling. I know scores were 10 on the ground. I found that there was a real good edge to that game, a very good intensity, lots of niggly stuff going on off the ball. It did boil over, and in fairness to the ref, I thought he dealt with it well. I didn't think, definitely the 2 red cards in the first half, I would thought maybe like that he probably was left with no option. Like Dan McCormick, very good. Brendan Maher again. I thought just the disappointing thing for Burris is that I thought their forwards were cleaned out in the second half. They had nobody to win a ball. Like, no forward scored from play in the second half. Everything was Eddie Ryan frees and the 2 brilliant scores from Dan McCormick. Jerry Kelly couldn't get on the ball. I don't think James Devaney touched the ball 5 or 6 times in the match. He was snuffed out. Like, Conor Kenny's red card was huge because it robbed him of that bit of physical presence as well. So, look, it's a sore one Borrislee have to get over, because it potentially, with the group they're in with Kildangan, Thurles and Clonoulty, the potential could be that Thurles, Kildangan and Clonoulty already have a West Championship one, that Thurles and Kildangan could be divisional champions, so, and already through to the knockout. So Borrislee will really be under pressure in the group stages of the county.
Yeah, pressure is massive. Like, that was the point I was going to come to.
Yeah.
To be 12 points to 10 ahead here and have a man up on Kildangan from that position, for no forward to score from play in the second half. And at the other end, Billy Seymour, who I thought had been very quiet up until the latter stage, and he scored 5 of the last 6 points. And he probably looking to have a big season if he's hoping that Liam Cahill might start sniffing around again. But yeah, very disappointed with the Borrislee forward. And I thought I'd like to give a special mention to Colin Boyle. I thought he was
very good. Second game in a row has been excellent.
Yeah, really
and
good.
In fairness, young Jack Burke and goals, you had to step in at short notice with Jody Harkin. I think he had a ruptured appendix during the week. Like, I bet you're going to your third choice keeper, like with James McCormick on away, and like, I thought he was very, very comfortable in the goals. Like, didn't have a save to make, but even any of those, like, in those conditions, any of the balls that dropped short, he would have dealt very comfortably with it. But most of the performance from Borrislee was generally pretty decent. Like, just how they've got to, their forwards have just got to step up greater when the pressure's on in these tight games.
Yeah, what did you make of the decision to bring Paddy? Like, and you understand you're bringing younger players in. A lot of the time, you bring him into the back line or whatever, and it might have been hard to throw Paddy McCormick into the forward line when you're down a player up there. But to bring Paddy McCormick in the half backs and Ray McCormick, his brother, in the forwards, you'd nearly be thinking it was the other way around. And I wonder if they had it back, would they have gone the other way around?
It probably would have suited, but like you were putting Paddy into a tough position, like where either a Mark and Paul Flynn or a Sean Hayes or a Billy Seymour, like really good experienced guys for Killadangan. And yeah, I thought I suppose the Paddy sub being brought in was enforced with Sean McCormick going off injured, but then you would have said Ray McCormick would have been the man for that. But maybe they felt that I suppose Ray isn't long back from playing in England, like so. But like they'll have to get him up to speed soon. And you definitely think Paddy's, I know for 18 years of age, but he definitely would have that bit of size to go into the forward line and make an impact. And they probably do need a small bit more size, because I'm not sure they're definitely not getting the best out of Kevin Maher playing in the inside forward line. He's just not getting on the ball enough. Like, and we know he's a very, very talented player. And look, I thought Eddie Ryan had another very, very good game. Like, and I know he's still under 20 for Tip next year, but I think he's definitely one. Liam Cahill has got to be getting in now, and if he mightn't get up to the level of starting for Tip next year, but I think the process has got to start with the likes of an Eddie Ryan to come in and be within that senior group, maybe looking towards 2025. Is that he has all the tools. There's no doubt about it.
A guy who definitely has all the tools and has had them for a number of years is Jake Morris. He scored 110, only a point out of free, as Nina Aero beat Tipperary Kenyans 224-216, which means they'll meet Killadangan in the North final again. What was your thoughts on Nina here? And Jake Morris, he's on serious form.
1-9 from play is ridiculous, like, and it just shows you the level of inter-county players that they come back to your club now at this stage and they're focused. They're almost unmarkable. You look at the other side for Tipperary, Sean Ryan got 2-3. Like, and look, he's been doing that for the last couple of years, but you would think that with now 2 years inter-county training under his belts that he's going to cook on to another level, and like he has, like there's no doubt about it. Like I assume you saw the clip of his goal where he nearly broke Conor Ryan's ankles the way he saw him the dummy and got around him. I was sore looking at it afterwards, but yeah, look, Jake is in cracking form, and look, it'll be fascinating to see how Killadangan try and put the clamps on him this weekend. You're probably looking at David Sweeney will probably be given a man marking job on Saturday evening, and look, David Sweeney is one of the best club defenders I've seen over the last decade. Probably just lacked that small bit of size and bit of pace maybe for inter-county level, but Jesus, as a club defender, I don't think there's not been too many better than him in the county over the last decade. And look, Nina will be looking to Jake to have a big game, because like they're still they're bringing through a lot of young players like the likes of Ben West, and Josh Keller's had a good campaign again. Sam O'Farrell's gone very well at cornerback, but then you have Sam O'Farrell potentially coming in starting against very experienced Killadangan forward. So there's lots of interesting matchups. It'd be interesting for me. Will Killadangan stick with what they started with the last two games, or will they maybe go back to what finished last weekend, which was Alan Flynn at centre back, Joe Gallagher back into the forwards? If Willie Connors is fit, will they put him in the middle of the field? Because like I do think Willie is better off in the middle of the play. Like, he can see passes that no other forward can see. And I'm not sure whether maybe his ankle problem that's stretching back to last year and that bad ankle injury he got against Kerry in the Munster League. I think this is still lingering. Like, so, I always think he's just better. It's like he just sees everything. Will they get Ty Gallagher or Declan McGrath available if they're successful on appeals? Like, so, I think Killadangan's experience, maybe that bit of hurt from last year, losing that final to Nina. Like, Killadangan, I suppose they were in the same boat from last Sunday. Like, Killadangan were ahead, Nina were down to 14 men, and Nina just came with a storm and finished. So Killadangan did to Boris what Nina did to Killadangan last year. It's fascinatingly set up for Saturday night in Dala, 7 o'clock. I've given the nudge slightly to Kildangan, just purely maybe on that little bit of hurt maybe from last year's final and that probably maybe little level of experience that might see them over the line. But I think it'll be very, very close.
Yeah, I see from the match report in Nina Garda that Paddy Murphy was centre back and he got an 8 out of 10. So obviously, big physical man there. So no harm having that buttress in your defence. Barry Heffernan playing in midfield, got a 7 out of 10 rating. So obviously, you'd imagine his form will keep building as he comes back from injury. Who do Kildangan have to try and shut down Jake Morris? And obviously, other players will have to pitch in and help out. But who do you see matching up with him? Is it a case of James Quigley maybe coming out? Or
no, I think it'll be David Sweeney. I think David Sweeney generally has gone on the best forward of the other teams. And look, these boys would have played each other all the way up at underage level. Like I know Jake is a few years younger than David, but like Jake could have been playing above his grade or a lot. So like these guys are familiar with each other for a lot of from under 21 through minor. Like so. Look, there's that'll be the key matchup for me. Is Sweeney on Morris, and look on the other side. You were saying like Sean Hayes, Billy Seymour, like Nina have a lot of guys to try and tie down there. So look, they're all very, very familiar with each other. Sure, look, Nina or Kildangan's only is a suburb of Nina now at this stage. Like sort of like most of the Kildangan lads would have gone to school in the CBS or Nina College. So they're all probably pals of each other in some ways, but there's a nice rivalry building. I think Nina probably had their nose put out a giant seeing this little club maybe from out the road who weren't in their radar for most of their lives, and then 2008 since then they've won 6 North titles and won a county, and it started taking maybe a little of the shine off Nina. So it'll be a bit of edge to this game on Saturday night, I've no doubt.
So they'll love to hear that they're only a suburb of Nina anyway. They should put that quote up on the wall from you anyway.
I'm going on geography, which is they're just out the ring road, and I'd say Burgess are the same.
So the North Intermediate final is on this weekend as well. Burgess against Lara. Obviously, you've an awful lot of skin in the game here, but Burgess beat Newport 313 to 117 there, and Lara, you had a nice win over Portrue. 119 to 010. I'm not sure how much you want to say about this, but you're expecting it to be tight, no doubt.
Yeah. Sure, look, we were happy enough with the performance on Saturday. I suppose that the way it ended with a couple of red cards, not ideal, but look, it's a great position to be in the final. Like I'm not surprised to see Burgess having come through the other side of the draw. I thought. From what I saw against Silver Mines, they were very good, and like I only got in late into Dala. They were hanging on for a finish, all right, against Newport, but I thought they were still comfortable. Like while Newport were putting on a lot of pressure, the defense held pretty well. Like didn't concede too many scoring chances in the last few minutes, even after Sean O'Brien got the goal to bring it back to a 1-score game. But there's no doubt that it looks like Dunamaher. He looked like he had some sort of a serious shoulder injury, whether it's a broken collarbone or an AC joint. He doesn't look like he'll be fit, but like you just wonder at this day when you see finals like this. I've seen it over the years, like even with Burgess last year in a under 21 North final, Mikey Ryan played with a broken finger and he had a man of the match performance. Like so, there's one club that might patch Dunno up some way to get him out to be Burgess. So look, I think it'll be a tight game in store on Saturday. On Sunday evening in Nina at 7 o'clock. So if anybody wants in North Tip wants a post All Ireland bit of hurling dessert, that'll be on, and then you have the intermediate final on in Tumivara on Sunday as the Borsican against Moneygall at 1:15. So good days hurling with that in the All Ireland final. Anybody likes the hurling, like so.
Yeah, no doubt. And Moneygall, they beat Shannon Rovers after extra time in their semi-final, and Borsican, they were up against the second team from Kildangan. They were a bit more comprehensive there with an 8-point win.
Scored 22 points in the first half. Like, it just shows you how. I mean, that's a decent Kildangan outfit. A lot of guys with senior level experience, maybe not in the recent past, but like good experience there. So like that's a fair win for Boris. Like, and well, I think Moneygall. I think the banner and the fact that they got such a scare with the Rovers, I think they'll be tuned in for this. Like there was a lot of loose talk maybe that they'd get over Shannon Rovers comfortably, and like they were 8 points up at one stage, and I suppose when you sort of half looking to the final then at that stage, and not taking anything away from the Rovers, like from talking to Liam Hogan, like it was their best performance they were very proud performance coming away, considering I think they were short 7 of the team that played in the North final last year. So like a small club like the Rovers just can't afford to do with that, but just shows you the spirit and the squad of players that still have are still competitive, and they'll fancy their chances against Moneygall in the first round of the county championship on Sunday week. Yeah, so I suppose that's another thing with the club. The first round of the county championship fixtures are out, were released last night. So no surprise to see the Killerwan going out on the first night, Friday week against Tumivara and Ida. It's a great way to start it off. Like the champions up against their. I'm not sure. I suppose Killerwan fans might tell me I'm not sure who the claim is their greatest rivals, because I know they have a lot. They have good few with Nina and Toom. I think Toom might be their greatest rival. I couldn't be certain, but that's a great way to start them off. Like some juicy games like Bursley and Clonolty on that Sunday at noon in Semple Stadium. Like that's huge now, particularly for Bursley.
Yeah, there's some seriously tasty fixtures coming up. Just a final point then on the Moneygall against Burris Kane match.
Yeah.
Like on one side, Oisin Larkin, he'd be a scorer in chief. You Philip Austin, Conor Ryan, some good attackers there. On the other side, you've got Joe Fogarty, who was with the Tipperary panel this year. He saw some game time in the Munster Championship. And you've also got Sean Kennelly, who was starting for the under-20s. So which side do you think has more of an attacking threat?
I think both do. Like, I think both teams, like if Sean Fogarty, Paddy Fogarty, like Killen, but Moneygall do. Like, but then the Burris Kane side, you look like 29 points and then you have like Gary Ryan only came off the bench, Philip Austin only came off the bench, Kieran Foley last year's All-Ireland minor midfielder only came off the bench. So like both teams are stacked with forwards. That come down to maybe whose defence holds up the better. I suppose the worry for Burris Kane would be the 4 goals they conceded to Killadang, and the fact that maybe that goalie Colin Larkin also had to make a few saves. So I suppose that would give Moneygall maybe a bit of hope that if they get enough quality ball into their full forward line, they might make some hay. I personally fancy Moneygall myself. I just think maybe they're a slightly bit more experienced. Okay, they made hard work of beating Shannon Rovers an extra time, but I just do think maybe that there might have been a small bit of complacency in the second half, and I don't think there'll be any complacency here. Like there's been very, very little between these two sides over the last few years, and I think they might just have enough to shade it.
Yeah, and we'll do a final call for the competition that we have. 2 free tickets for Nolan Park for the All-Ireland Camogie semi-final between Tipperary and Waterford. Just reply to us on whatever social media channel you're watching on. Who did Tipperary beat in the All-Ireland quarter-final? And I suppose that's it from the show today. Just a reminder that
just get your take on the All-Ireland. Who you siding with? I know you want to see both teams lose.
Yeah, both teams to lose. By the way, Nina Guardian is out now, so pick up a copy of that. I think Limerick will get over the line, and I'd say I'm not sure that. Like, I just don't know if Kilkenny will produce the same performance that they did last year. I still think it'll be very tight. I think it'll be like within 5 points anyway. But like Cian Lynch, he just showed signs in the semi-final without taking over the game against Galway that he's sort of coming back to himself. I think we've seen signs all year that Peter Casey is coming back to himself, and he's a very difficult player to stop. Like, he's not just a straight line runner. Yeah. And I mean, I'm not trying to say that that's all that Tony Kelly is, because obviously he's one of the modern brilliant players. Yeah. But that's a completely different thing for Mikey Butler to try and lock down. And if he goes soloing up the field looking to get, do some damage the other way as he did against Clare, I think he's going to find an awful lot of traffic in the way. So I think a lot depends on what sort of team that Limerick can put out. Are they 100%? If they are, I expect Limerick to win this game by 4 or 5, complete the 4 in a row. But yeah, I'm very interested to see how does TJ Reid go in this game. Last year, he played high up the pitch. He was up against Barry Nash at times as well. Did that little bit of damage. And, geez, it would be some achievement if he was to be able to, at 35 years of age, have another big impact in a final. But, yeah, I'd have to say, I think that Limerick will just about get across the line here. But I'm expecting an absolute war.
Yeah, no, actually, yeah. It's just look, it's look. I know I said at the start of the show. Maybe it feels the build up is a bit little off in terms of being in Tip, but I'm sure come Sunday, like the whole country will sit down and watch it, and hopefully we get a good game. I know the weather's a little bit iffy for Sunday, and I suppose that might be another thing too. If we do get some rain, like who potentially does that impact more? Probably doesn't, but like we haven't had too many wet days in the championship so far, so hopefully that's the way it stays.
Yeah, well, one thing's for sure, it'll definitely be an all-out war. That's it from the show today. We'll be back again next week, and hopefully the Tipperary Camogie team get the job done at the weekend. Thanks, Shane.
Cheers. Thanks again.